cast your minds back to the beginning of Jurassic Park, where we see the legendary scene of this baby velociraptor hatching out of the egg. At this stage of the movie, it is the first time they've seen up close a living, breathing dinosaur. But have you ever actually stopped to think, what actually happened to this baby velociraptor after the fall of Jurassic Park? Did they just abandon it when they evacuated the island? Did something else happen to it? Is it even in any of the other movies? The actual truth on this will completely shock you and is something you would never believe. Now, in the original film in 1993, we know that they are cloning dinosaurs, and these dinosaurs come from dinosaur eggs. They say in one of the scenes that all the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park are female. We later know this not to be true because Dr. Alan Grant finds eggs out in the wild and tells us the story of how they can reproduce asexually. Now, this is all well and great, you might be asking, but what has this got to do with the baby velociraptor in the beginning, and what has actually happened to it? So let me continue. When the cast visit the lab, they are just in time conveniently to watch this baby velociraptor hatch out of the egg, where John Hammond then tells us that he insists on being present at the birth of every dinosaur on the island. We then have this hugely touching scene where we see a baby dinosaur hatching out of the egg, nuzzling into the fingers, but then Alan Grant takes it into his hands and lets this cry, saying, "What species is this?" And Henry Wu tells us it's the velociraptor species. This completely shocks Dr. Alan Grant. Now, at this stage, this is the last point in which we see it on screen in the Jurassic Park movie. Sure, we see the fully grown velociraptors later on, but as for this baby velociraptor, that's the last moment of its screen time. So you might be scratching your heads at this point thinking, well, how do we actually know what happens to it? Well, there is so much going on, I will explain it all to you. Now, eventually Jurassic Park loses all power, the dinosaurs escape, and the entire park goes to hell, with all the staff basically evacuating the island. That leaves the question, what actually happened to the baby velociraptor? Before the power went out, this baby velociraptor would have been placed in a holding pen as such, an incubator, I would have presumed. But when the power goes out, what would then become of this incubator slash holding pen? Well, it wouldn't be functional, of course, and thus that would mean that the baby dinosaur would potentially die. Now, we do know that the power was only out for a short amount of time because it does later get rebooted by Ellie, thus restoring power to the entire island, potentially turning the incubator back on. Now, this is all relying on the fact that that dinosaur is still in the incubator or holding pen, whatever we're going to call it at this stage. The likelihood is the holding pen slash hatchery it would have been in would have had an automated feeding system anyway. Eventually that automated feeding system would have been run dry slash turned off, where they would either A, have to leave that system and go out into the wild, where it could potentially be eaten by another wild carnivore, or because it was so little slash a juvenile, be unable to fend for itself. All are very likely scenarios of what could have happened to our baby dinosaur, but they are not the right ones, believe it or not. Oh no, there is something far worse that will happen to our dinosaur. Now, we also haven't explored the fact that that baby dinosaur could have actually been taken off-site when they left the island due to the evacuation of the hurricane. We never actually see a baby nursery slash hatchery in Jurassic Park where they're keeping all the baby dinosaurs. We know they're hatching them, but where do they actually keep these juvenile slash baby dinosaurs? Do they move them over to Isla Sorna? Because we know Isla Sorna was basically the cutting floor before they move them to Jurassic Park fully grown. But surely on Isla Nublar they'd have some type of hatchery slash holding pen for these baby dinosaurs, although we never see it. So another option is the fact that soon after it was born, they could have transported it to Isla Sorna. But there is something wrong with this theory. That would not have been able to take place, again, because of the inbound hurricane. Even if they wanted to, or they did transport dinosaurs off of the island to Isla Sorna for them to become mature and fully grown before transporting them back, that would not have been an option because of the hurricane stopping transportation on and off the island at that stage. So with that information, we now know that the baby dinosaur did not leave Jurassic Park during that time. Further to this, when the Jurassic Park cleanup incident occurred sometime after the original and fall of Jurassic Park, you could argue that when the cleaners arrived, they could have killed that dinosaur there and then. Because there would be no reason for them to remove it from the island, because where would it go? They've now shut down Jurassic Park, let loose all the other dinosaurs on Isla Sorna, so there'd be no reason to really keep a dinosaur at this stage. And plus, by that point, it wouldn't be a baby anymore, it would be a juvenile slash maybe even adult. Now, everything we've just said previously is correct to the film universe, but there is something we haven't touched on at all, and that is the novel canon. Now, the 1993 film Jurassic Park is based on the novel by Michael Crichton, and they are extremely similar, although there are several differences here and there, but they basically follow exactly the same story. Spielberg had approached Michael Crichton and asked him to adapt his novel version into a film version, and thus Jurassic Park the film was born. But what is extremely interesting is the novel version basically follows exactly the same events as the film, deviates here and there, and guess what? They have the raptor in the novel version. The scene where it bursts out the egg like a chest burster is exactly the same as it is in the novel as it is in the film, although we see more of the raptor later on in the novel, and this is where we learn the actual fate of this dinosaur. In the novel, the raptor is far more cuddly and dependent on the humans. It nuzzles into Tim, it nuzzles into Alan, and basically follows them around. It does stay in the hatchery and pops up later on. Now brace yourselves, because this is slightly spoilery for the novel and does get a little bit sad and gruesome, so prepare yourselves. So in the novel, Dr. Alan, Grant, Lex and Tim are being chased through the facility by velociraptors. They head into one of the labs where they're jumped upon by the baby velociraptor. It actually jumps on the back of Tim's leg or neck, I believe, and nuzzles into him. But at this point, they're still being chased by adult velociraptors. These velociraptors are basically now standing in front of Dr. Alan, Grant, Lex, and Tim. The baby velociraptor, on the other hand, is now extremely hungry and scared and decides to nuzzle into Lex's neck, as if looking for shelter and comfort away from the other velociraptors. Dr. Alan, Grant, Lex, and Tim assume that the velociraptors are looking for the baby, so they decide to basically throw the baby velociraptor at the other velociraptors as a distraction, or hoping that they're going to go away. This was a huge and the biggest mistake of the novel. The baby velociraptor slowly and cautiously walks up to the adult velociraptors as if it's looking at its parents, making little noises, and expects them to welcome it with open arms, or claws in this case. This isn't what happens, however. The velociraptors, upon seeing the baby, launch a flurried attack and rip this baby velociraptor in half and start to eat it. In a tragic twist of fate, this is what actually happened to our baby velociraptor. Now, this is basically the novel's version of what happened to the baby velociraptor, and I would take this myself as what actually happened, because the novel basically follows the events of the film down to a T, although the novel embellishes and gives more backstory. So in my eyes, this is what happened to the baby velociraptor. It makes the most sense in my eyes, because if the baby didn't die of starvation in the movie, some other carnivore would have eventually made it inside that building and hunted it down anyway. It is a truly tragic and gruesome end for that baby velociraptors. Not many YouTubers actually cover this and tell a full story of just the movie. I could only imagine how that baby velociraptor had felt seeing the adult velociraptors, thinking it was saved, it was now going to be taken care of, the other velociraptors are now going to look after it, when all of a sudden they turn on it, ripping it from limb to limb. But alas, this is just a theory, a game! I thought I was going to do that then. No, this is the Shadows channel, not Game Theorists. Anyway, as much as I don't want that to be true, it is, unfortunately. But what do you think actually happened in the movie's lore? Do you think it followed the lore of the novel, or do you think it's something completely different? Please let me know in the comments, because I read every single comment, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'd like to thank my YouTube members as always, so thanks guys for supporting the channel. I couldn't do without you, and your names are on the screen now. If you want to support my channel, see the description link below. I also have a Five Nights at Freddy's theory channel, so if you like Five Nights at Freddy's, go on over there and check that out. I'm Shadows, and I hope to see you in the next one. Cheers now. Bye bye.